Well, 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 leave it to Elliotte Friedman to stir the pot and add the spices. Things are heating up here with the Edmonton Oilers, and it all comes after the team lost out against the Vegas Golden Knights the other night. Their win streak snapped 17 games, 18 games, whatever time the Pittsburgh Penguins, nope, sorry, they're one behind. The Oilers and the Vegas Golden Knights had an absolute slobber knocker of a game the other night, but with the aftermath comes the updates, and it's Elliotte Friedman going out there and giving it to us in the form of a 32 Thoughts podcast clip. Now, as always, links are going to be in the description if you want to go ahead and listen to 32 Thoughts, but to go over what it is that Friedman discusses in today's episode, we had NHL Watcher going out there and providing the updates and the transcriptions. So, this is what Friedman talks about in regards to the Edmonton Oilers and what other assets they have other than their first-round pick. They might have another good asset here in Philip Broberg. He's playing 25 minutes a night in Bakersfield, and he's playing extremely well. So I'm curious to see what happens there. Following up, Friedman also said this, that if Jake Guentzel is available, in my opinion, that's their guy. That's the guy they'd like to get. And so, because these two quotes came simultaneously in the show, let's connect them together and discuss what exactly a Broberg-Guentzel kind of trade would look like, whether or not everything balances out, and just give an overall status as to these players. So, Philip Broberg, to his credit, has honestly been playing pretty alright. Even Friedman goes out there and says it. The problem with Broberg is that it's been very apparent that he's been on the market for a while. He has, quote-unquote, wanted out for a while. He's 22 years old, signed till the end of this season on his ELC, left-handed defenseman, 6'3", 198, and after having the entire drama surrounding him, requesting a trade and being sent up and down, he's got 18 points in 27 AHL games right now. On pace for about 40 points, which isn't bad. I mean, it's roughly the same point production metric he's had in the AHL this entire time. The difference is, though, with Broberg being in a spot where there was already some discomfort with being an Oiler, you could very well debate whether or not there is a reduction of value here based off of those intangibles. That, sure, Philip Broberg may be seen as a pretty good prospect with a pretty good ceiling, but he hasn't made it work in Edmonton. He's been beaten out by other guys consistently on the depth chart, and the question of if he's actually going to fulfill his potential, that starts to bring itself up. Because part of the reason we had talked about Philip Broberg not being able to find himself onto the lineup is not because, the Oilers are just a big, mean organization that doesn't reward players. Nah, this team is in the business of winning Stanley Cups, and you could debate whether or not, Ken Holland has done the best job to do that, but for Philip Broberg, there's been a lot of dissatisfaction with the way he has been developing over the years, even in the conversations that we had earlier about how he may request a trade or whatever. There are always fans in the comments saying, yeah, he just hasn't developed in the way that we want him to. He may be playing well in the AHL right now, but how far is that going to take him into the NHL? How much does that make him an established trade chip that other teams would value? Sure, he's 22 years old. Sure, he's got a long time to still grow and develop, but between 18 years old to 22 years old, there's a certain amount of growth that you expect to see. He hasn't been able to do that. Ever since getting drafted, he was always seen as a big guy with a lot of tools, very great skating. He could blitz by guys, and if everything panned out, I don't like using this comparison, but think of a Bobby Orr light, where Philip Broberg plays a style where he has the puck on his stick, and he'll just go. That's kind of the way that he played in the junior tournaments in his draft-eligible years, and it's why he was touted as this potential number one defenseman, because he had all the tools, but just not the right handyman in his head to use those tools. So as his career went on, his hockey sense, his decision-making, it never really grew to the expectations that people thought it could have, and now he's here. So Broberg, having a few good stints, you could say that it's good fodder to go out there and use this as bait and say, hey, look, he's playing well in the AHL right now, why not take a chance at him? Because the rest of his development has been so shaky that I think at this point, if the Oilers are going to go out there and try to push all their chips to the middle, they want to go all in, final years of McDavid and Draisaitl on these contracts, you got to go out there and explore all options. And for Philip Broberg, you could very well say that is that. Now, when it comes to the other guy that is involved here, Jake Guentzel has been linked to the Oilers for a while. We made a few videos just talking about some of the introductory ideas, like he's linked, he's here, he's there. But now Elliotte Friedman's going out there and saying, yeah, I think he's the main guy. And for the Penguins and their entire progression this season, it's been kind of tough, There are good players on this team, of course. We recognize the talents and the longevity of guys like Crosby, Malkin, Letang, and Carlsson, but the Penguins are on the outside of the playoff picture looking in. They are pretty far removed from a wildcard spot at the time of recording this audio. They're currently 5 points out, on the Detroit Red Wings. They do have games in hand, though, so that is in their favor, too. And of course, Sidney Crosby has been a monster this season. But with all the rumors that the Penguins might have offered Guentzel something and he rejected that contract extension, and then even more rumors saying that that idea was false and whether or not we should really believe it, there's a lot of, noise in the air right now. But Elliotte Friedman is one of the more reputable insiders going out there and saying, yeah, if he is in the market, if he is, available to be traded for, then Edmonton is going to be knocking on Kyle Dubas's door. They are going to want this guy. And so if you think about the idea of these two thoughts, you say, okay, Philip Broberg could be shopped, he's potentially a good trade chip, and the Oilers would also want Jake Guentzel. It's easy to try to connect them, right? So if you think about a Broberg for Guentzel trade, what is the price for a rental here? Like we had just seen in Vancouver, Elias Lindholm, that rental cost was a lot. You had Kuzmenko, 2 prospects, a first and a fourth. For Sean Monahan in Winnipeg, it was a little bit less, but you could understand why there was still value there. First round pick, etc., etc. You're getting centers. You're getting guys who can play two-way penalty-killing roles for your team. Jake Guentzel isn't necessarily that. He's not a center, he's not a PK guy, he is just a very talented offensive winger. And if you wanted to play him with a guy like Draisaitl or McDavid, it could be an absolutely stellar combo. What's the price on that? If it's just a first-round pick straight up, no. If it's just Philip Broberg straight up, probably not. The Oilers would probably have to attach a few other things to get somebody of the magnitude of a Jake Guentzel. I know it's a little bit awkward thinking about the Oilers expending big assets for a trade deadline rental, but Jake Guentzel, in my opinion at least, is the most valuable asset of all the guys that have gotten traded so far. Like, Lindholm, sure, he fills a need in Vancouver, right-handed center, two-way guy, etc., but Jake Guentzel is so gosh darn good that there's an even bigger desire here for other teams and for what the Oilers could try to accomplish with this guy on their team. So even if it is a rental, even if he doesn't sign an $8 million AAV extension with whichever team it is that gets him, then there's still good value in being able to get Guentzel for a playoff run, maybe make the third round, maybe win the Stanley Cup, whatever, finally give McDavid that hardware. Again, if you win the Stanley Cup, your trades don't matter. If you win a Stanley Cup, it doesn't matter what you give up on a trade heading into the Stanley Cup season. If you get the cup, you get the cup, and nobody in your fan base is going to care what other dumb trades you make over the next 5 years or so. There's a good amount of leeway here built up if you win a Stanley Cup, and if you trade for Jake Guentzel, the Oilers' opportunity of doing that is a lot more. Whether or not the Penguins would accept just a Philip Broberg straight up for Guentzel is another story. I'd probably say no. I'd say you'd have to add a little bit more if you're Ken Holland, but still, the idea is there. So, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about this Elliotte Friedman 32 Thoughts podcast update, wherein he talked about the Oilers wanting to get a guy like Jake Guentzel and potentially trading away a player like Philip Broberg? I hope you enjoyed this video, and bye.